You are watching
For
Xirtus.
honestly, I'm sorry. I feel like it's a type of controlled opposition that wants to give such an extreme reaction that we
He's
can't
trying
just
to
get
demolish the
practical
party.
stuff. He's trying, yeah,
He's trying to,
and I
they're trying to demolish the party. Absolutely. They're demolishing
it
the
sure
Democratic Party
looks
the
like
same
it.
way
Yeah,
the Republican Party was demolished so that Trump can move in. Of course, you have to demolish the Democratic Party so they can move in the
it
Dixiecrats,
might
the
be an
neo Dixiecrats.
oxymoron, but if I was a reasonable Democrat, why would I want to support something that's going to be so destructive of the Democratic Party?
I
Like,
mean, I think
it
you
doesn't
lost
make
half
any
the
sense.
audience when you said reasonable Democrat, but that's the
I
problem.
said it
That's
might
where
be
we're
an
at now.
oxymoron, but just for
Yeah.
theoretically, like it doesn't make any sense. Like I don't even how is this even like why who thought that this is a good idea? Who actually wants the Democratic Party to even survive? Like it
That's my
just it's
question. Isn't it clearly that they're trying to knock it down as far as they can knock it down? Because I remember the Republican Party during the fall of John McCain, when John McCain lost the election to Obama. What was the Republican GOP like? But it shambles. It was complete shambles. It was like you had like farmer Mormon boys from Iowa that were showing up all illusioned and confused.
yeah.
Right? There was nothing left, and then that meant you could move in, and what that means is moving in lots and lots of your own money in order to get back control of the government, because you had a bunch of people dying out and then their kids weren't interested in it. And maybe that's what they're doing to the DNC now. They like hoard it to the point that there's nothing left. They sold the company. It's a brand, like they said.
Well,
What do you do with
hear me out.
brands?
We're a little out of balance right now because what we don't have any pro-Masonic political party anymore, right? The anti-Masonic party and the Whigs and disillusioned Democrats kind of made up the new version of the Republican Party. So you've got anti-Masonry built into the crux of the Republican Party, but the Democratic Party is not pro-Masonic in any sort of way. So I think that there's
What?
actually a very real threat
What do
here.
you mean the Democratic Party are not pro-Masonic? That's nonsense.
Yeah.
They're
What do you
yeah,
what
you
are you
I
talking
don't I
about?
don't
middle class blue Americans, while a lot of them have gone to the Trump supporters, there are still the college educated middle class blue, or the white collar, like if you really want to call them that, people that are like in America, I mean all across America, that are Democrats that are still Masonic Baptist.
I'm not saying no Democrats are Masonic. I'm just saying that the Democratic Party is not directly aligned with Masonry the
A lot
same
of
way
Masonic
that
lodges. I don't know about that.
but the same way that the roots
I would
of
say they
the
all
current Republican Party and the Whig Party come from they literally come from
Masonic.
anti-Masonry.
The Jacksonian Democrats were the fucking most Masonic party that ever there was in the United States. They, during the anti-Masonic hysteria, took over with Polk in 1844. I mean, could you find a more Masonic party than the Jacksonian Democrats? The Democrats were certainly a Masonic group, and their association with the KKK kind of proves that in a lot of ways, because they're following the lodge traditions in order to establish their voting halls. I mean, everything about it comes from Masonry. I don't know if that I'm not saying that like they're the only Masons, but it's not. I wouldn't say the Republicans are more. I think the Republicans are maybe at this point more trad or something, and they've inherited
Isn't
the
this
lodge.
always the
I think this
argument
is
though that above the two parties is the Masons, or are we just out of that now? Are we saying that's the
We're
Illuminati? It's
I
totally
think it's
different.
I think it's usually the Jesuits at that point, right? Because
Right.
the
Right.
whole thing with like who were the Freemasons before the Jesuit suppression? Nobody. Nobody
Right.
cared about the Freemasons. They always say, "Oh, it's 4,000 years old," but really, it's like it's the 1700s, late 1600s. They start to become relevant because the Jesuits get kicked out of every country by the Vatican because they want to take their banks, they want to take their economy, they want to take their lands. So the Jesuits have to move in something, and so they're like, "Hey, here's a group that are not associated with the church, and it's so severed, like you can be excommunicated even for being a member. It's perfect to be
Mhm.
controlled
But
by
see,
the Jesuits."
they come in
And
waves too. Like you mentioned that like right now we're at like way beyond maybe even the tail end of the resurgence of masonry in the 1800s. But before that, it went through a lull. It basically was like 1500s, and then it tapered out, and then it had a resurgence in the 1800s, and we're clearly at the tapering out phase. If not, like it's continuing to taper out. But it means that at this moment there is, it seems, the least amount of Masonic influence in national sort of elections and politics
you really
compared
don't think?
to 100 years or 200 years ago.
What?
I'm talking
I
about
still think
American where places
I think
matter.
we still see handshakes. I don't think that Trump is, I mean, he loves Apollo, right? He's all about the Apollyon and Abaddon Antichrist symbolism, and I think he does do the Masonic handshakes, right? Isn't that kind of the point?
I mean, I think that the handshakes are kind of silly. Like we don't
Okay.
need handshakes anymore.
He doesn't even have an honorary position in Freemasonry like Obama did, right? I mean, there's no is there a connection there that like from a technical standpoint beyond like, oh, it's a handshake or oh, he's got the
Biden
symbolism.
just got it. Biden just got honorary Prince Hall Masonry, I think.
That's what I was saying about the Black Lodge. But, you know, and in this case, it's not Lynch's Black Lodge. It's literally Black People Lodge, I guess, with Biden.
There's never, according
like, if you ain't putting, I don't know.
according to Grok, there's never been any evidence. He's never publicly acknowledged it. I mean, he never publicly acknowledged it, but he has been photographed wearing interpreted Masonic symbols.
This would be the
He's
coolest thing
he's
ever.
also been photographed with a yarmulke.
Just imagine like a gaggle of Masons all decked out in their like aprons and stuff, and they just take pictures with like politicians, like kind of like photo bombing, right? And once that picture exists, like you're screwed. Like you're
like Maxwell used to do. She'd like photo bomb, like, oh, if somebody's taking a picture, Maxwell would be like, oh, I'm with them. You know?
Trump's got ties to Scotland.
behind him.
One thing that supports Thomas's contention about Freemasons, I think, is like just going on to Netflix and at least seeing how many documentaries about Freemasons there are, and just like everybody knows about Freemasonry, and kind of just like, hey, everybody, you know about Freemasonry?
Want to
And
see
that's
what
kind of
your
a good
grandma
excuse
used to
to
do
say
for
that they
fun?
don't actually have any real power.
They do the same thing with Scientology. I mean, like it's just it's intellectual
Well, that's a
property that you're not
different,
allowed to. Is it?
It's more like, but that's more like
We have secrets we own.
anti, like you
Trade
really
secrets.
these are evil. The Scientology is like an evil corporation, whereas the Freemasons are kind of just like a quaint.
True. HBO really points the finger at them. I think there's a lot of people that are, but I don't know if Netflix does always. Isn't it?
Well,
Yeah,
I've been tripping out on HBO because they're the ones who keep putting out these documentaries that apparently they're totally allowed to spread whatever disinfo they want. Like that was what came up with what was it, Marilyn Manson's trial, where they're like, okay, so HBO made these claims, and then it's like, oh, Amber Heard isn't responsible for the claims that HBO makes. It's the same thing with the Michael Jackson Finding Neverland thing, where the guy was totally caught saying this thing happened at Neverland Ranch, but Neverland Ranch hadn't even gone under construction in the time frame when he said it existed, like when this thing happened. And there's like, oh, and you're like, wait, man. So we're not suing. The judge literally said, he's like, HBO is not on trial here. You know, you are. You didn't make the claim. HBO. Take that up with HBO. It's like, what the hell is going on? Like, are they just allowed to do that because they got good lawyers? Is that how it works? Like,
the only thing worse than SA is time travel combined with SA. That's even worse than the original report.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, totally.
Why would you abuse time travel to do such a horrendous thing? That's disgusting.
Right.
Oh man, I don't know. I think also Trump quit the Screen Actors Guild in 2021 or something like that in May, right? It was something like that, like right after he was no longer president. So to me, it's interesting, this idea of Obama and Biden being part of this creative artists agency, and that they're going to, I mean, like Obama was involved with Netflix, and just how far we're going with who is what in this world.
Would it be a net negative or net positive if Mel Gibson came in and he ended the Screen Actors Guild the same way that they're trying to end like Department of Education?
Well, it's different, right? The Screen Actors Guild's a union. It's not the same as the Department of Education.
They're destroying it on their own, kind of. So like, even like looking at the Academy Awards, like it all kind of like, there's kind of like a weird symbolic thing happening. Like, is it going to go to Demi Moore for the substance, or is it going to go to the blue avatar lady for Amelia Perez? Like, in the juxtaposition of like, you know, of where we're at now, because like I lost all respect or just interest in the Academy Awards for the most part a couple times, but one thing in particular was with what was it, 12 Years a Slave? Is that what it's called? Like, whereas like there's all these people who are judging, who are like, these are the official people deciding who gets the Oscar together in their votes, and like the amount of them that admitted that they never watched the movie that they voted for, that they just voted for it because of its cultural significance. And you're like, wait, it's not even about if the movie was good anymore. Like, you brought up Parasite. I was surprised. I was like, yeah, that was a pretty good movie, but at the same time, it's like, wow, this is still a cultural issue. This is why it gets the attention that it gets. And it's like, I feel like at one time they at least like try, like you can see it with horror movies. Like if you go through the history, like people will say now, oh, horror movies, the Oscars, the Oscars don't care about them. It's like, actually look at the history of horror movies that got Oscars, including Exorcist and Jaws and all this stuff. Like there's a lot of them. And then at a certain point, it's like, well, you can produce a great horror movie, and if it's A24 horror, it's not going to get an award. If it's A24 cultural issue, like Moonlight or something, which is a good movie, don't get me wrong, but it's like now it can get the awards. Like nothing for Hereditary, Midsommar, Ari Aster, anything, Robert Eggers, whatever. It's like they have their focus, and like you can see it more and more pronounced. I think it's kind of self-destructing in a way. Like people aren't going to like treat it with any, more and more people, something's happening right now. It's kind of like what I see with RFK Jr. It's kind of like, and he's not the only example of this, but it's basically like allegorically, if somebody had read To Kill a Mockingbird, and all these people had all these opinions, but hardly anyone read To Kill a Mockingbird, and they're all arguing about the significance of it and what they think of it and whatever. And then like time goes by, and more people read To Kill a Mockingbird, and the person who still hasn't read it, like down the line, when it's like 80% of the people around them have all read the book, and they have this really strong position that they've identified with and they've been holding on to, and they start embarrassing themselves because they keep talking to groups of people who have freaking read the book, and they keep looking worse and worse and worse, but they don't see how bad they look because they're still stuck in the time when most people hadn't read the book. So they keep saying the stuff that was really popular to say when other people hadn't read it, and they're like, they don't understand like what even it means to walk a mile in someone's shoes. They like have this other interpretation of it because they didn't read it in context, and they keep embarrassing themselves further and further, and double, triple, like triple down on what it was that they said back when no one read the book, and then it reaches a crescendo, and it's like at a certain point, absolutely ridiculous. That's happening.